The first thing, we have got three different types of tenses which indicate three different time periods. And these three different time periods are present, past, and future. And the present actually talks about what is going on, past talks about what happened, and future talks about what will happen in the future. Almost all of us know this. The problem is the different structures used and how we ask these questions in the test. Let's start with the present tense. In present tense, we always use the present form of the verb, which is verb 1 and verb 5 if we are talking about simple present. And that means we can study or studies. If I use I, then I would say I study, and if it is he, then it would be he studies. So that's for the simple present. For the simple past is only used when we are talking about a simple event in the past, and for this we use in the verb second form. And remember, this is the only tense where we use the second form of the verb. Then the third form of the verb is only used in the perfect tense. As you can see in this example here, now let me scroll to the example. Okay, I hope you can see it now. So the perfect tense, you can see this is the only form of the tense where we use the third form of the verb, as you can see in this example. Although what we use before these third forms of the verb depends on which tense we are talking about. If we are talking about present tense, then we use have or has depending on the subject. If we are using past, then we use had, and if we are using future, then we just add will, have before the verb 3 form. The fourth form of verb is called continuous form or verb 4 form. This form is used with present tense, past tense, and future tense when we are talking about continuous events. We always have to use be form of the verb if we are using continuous tense, and be form means is, am, are, was, were. And if it is present continuous, we use am, are, or is. If we are using past, then we use was or were. And if it is future, we always use will be. And going to be, this is also a form of future continuous tense, but we will not discuss this today. The perfect continuous tense has the characteristics of both perfect tense as well as continuous tense. Or in other words, if you combine the verb of the continuous tense with the structure of the perfect tense, you get perfect continuous tense, which means have been or has been for present perfect, had been for past perfect, and will have been for future perfect. So these are the 12 different types of tenses. But in our exam, they'll never ask questions in this manner. They will never ask us what is present tense or what is past tense or what is the structure of the tense. We have to actually use our knowledge to answer these questions. So how do we do that? Let's have a look. In the exam, if you feel like there is a gap for a verb, you first have to think, do we need a present tense verb, past tense verb, or future tense verb? Now, after that, you have to decide which form of the verb will we use. And that depends on in which tense you need to write the sentence. If you are writing this in the present tense, for example, and if you feel like this is simple present tense, then you will pick either the verb 1 or verb 5, and that will depend on the subject. But how would you know if the question is about the present continuous or past continuous or present perfect or past perfect? If there is a gap like has, have, or had, remember that's a question about perfect tense and you need verb 3. If there is, am, are, was, were before the gap, that's a question about continuous tense and you need verb 4. If there is nothing and you just need a verb, most likely you're looking for simple form of the tense, and that would be either simple present or simple past. In case of future, usually you will have a modal auxiliary, and that would be will, and that again means you will need verb 1. In case of perfect continuous, these tenses are not asked that often in the exam, but it's very easy to identify these tenses. Have been, has been, or had been indicates that you are looking for the perfect continuous tense. But remember, has been, had been, and have been are also used as the passive voice form of the present perfect, past perfect, and future perfect. Here things get a little complicated and confusing. I suggest that before you move on, later on when this live session will end, you can pause the video here and then check what would be the passive form of these three different tenses and how to identify them. It's very important for anyone preparing for this test to know about the different tenses and different voices. At the beginning it can be confusing because there are too many forms and too many variations. But if you go through this table, then perhaps it will get easier. I'll upload this table on your Facebook group and you can use it as a reference if needed later. So this is all about tense. I know this has not been that comprehensive and I didn't plan it to be, but if you have any problems, you can ask me in the comments and I'll try to explain it. Otherwise, you can use this reference table first and then discuss this in the class if needed.